Right, good afternoon now, ladies and gentlemen. First thing to say, I'm opening this meeting of the Combined Authority Scrutiny Board. First thing to apologise for anybody that is waiting to view or has been waiting to view or use this meeting at a later date. We've had some technical issues in that we weren't able to start the meeting on time because we didn't have sufficient members here to validate the meeting and make us core it, but we are now core it. So I'm going to resume the meeting. We started in an informal basis whereby the Mayor gave us a current status quo in relation to role and the Combined Authority. We've still got a couple of more questions for the Mayor on those lines. But for the benefit of those viewing this recording, we'll go around the room. Obviously we've got the Mayor Clare here. Richard?
Yes, hi, I'm Richard Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Resources and Section 73 Officer for EMCCA.
Hi, I'm Nick Wash. I am the Director of Finance and Deputy Section 73 Officer for EMCCA.
Councillor Abby Brennan, I'm the Deputy Leader of Rushcliffe Borough Council.
And I'm Councillor Kevin Gillett. I'm from North East Derbyshire, but represent the districts and boroughs in Derbyshire for today's meeting.
I'm Andy Abrams, Executive Mayor at Mansfield and representing Nottinghamshire districts.
I'm Councillor Emily Lonsdale. I'm representing Derby City Council.
Councillor Dawn Abbott, my ward Staveley, also a Cabinet Member for Health and Communities at Derbyshire County Council.
Simon Abbott, County Councillor and Cabinet Member for Send and Education.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, Vice Chairman of the Committee and one of the representatives from Nottinghamshire County Council.
Michael Edley, Statutory Scrutiny Officer.
And I'm Chair. I'm Chris Bolter and represent Derby City Council and chair this meeting. Right, I'm conscious of time and we need to, and the Mayor's time in particular. We thankfully got an update from yourself on the status quo, and we've gone into quite some detail in relation to the establishment of the Transport Authority for EMCCA. But it sort of leads us on to other lines of inquiry, and you touched on the size of the establishment of the authority. You've talked about the numbers in terms of potentially up to 400 members, 400 members of staff for the authority. So I think the line of question we're interested in asking around is your ambition for that, and how you're going to plan to accommodate the total number of electoral members of staff, what accommodation requirements that means, when that might be, and how that might relate to any local government reorganisation. And then we're looking at new temporary accommodation. But so it's about the size of the authority.
Okay, so we are an authority with a range of different powers and things that we need to do. But obviously we will need to make sure that we've got the staff that allow us to deliver on those responsibilities. And if you look across other combined authorities, they have grown significantly larger than ourselves, because they've also recognised that they've taken on more responsibilities. So ultimately, it is about making sure that you have what you need to do the job, but do so within the restraints of the funding envelopes that you have. In terms of where do we house those people, as you all know, that we're currently based in Chesterfield in a very temporary location. We have agreed with the board that we will have a plan for a medium-term office base, which will also be in Chesterfield, and that will allow us to have more of our staff in. We do currently use locations around the region. That means that sometimes people will drop into a desk in some of our constituent authorities, or if it's convenient, or indeed I know that even sometimes there may be desk space available at some of the district councils. That longer term is you would expect us to have and it's certainly the expectation of the board as part of the ongoing discussions, to have a permanent home. I would expect and hope that that permanent home is Chesterfield, but that's not a decision yet that the board have taken. They've taken a decision that our medium term home is Chesterfield, in a new location in Chesterfield, and we will obviously come back to, you know, what do we need in the future as soon as possible, and make the plans for that.
Any quick questions along those lines? No? And another topic that we've expressed interest in is how the progression and the rollout of the Community Development Fund. If you could give us an overview on the flavour of what grants have been given and how they're progressing, and how are you going to evaluate the outcomes from that fund?
Okay. So just to recap, I launched the Merrill Community Development Fund. It's a £3 million fund which I wanted to make sure wasn't just used in small kind of one-off grants across the region, but gave an opportunity to make a significant difference into communities that are left behind. We selected, with a range of criteria, 10 areas across the region, 2 in each of the cities, 3 in each of the counties, where those communities would receive anything up to about £300,000 per community over the next 3 years, range of opportunities, whether that be revenue or capital. And we asked for those communities and supporting local organisations to put in submissions on what they, in engagement with the local community, felt was needed to give a long-lasting change within that community. But we were open to understanding, you know, what those needs might be. The bid submissions closed on Monday the 8th of December, and we've received 40 bids across the 10 areas, with at least 2 bids being received in each area. Some in some cases for the whole amount, and some in some cases for an element of it, of the amount that's available. We are, many of the bids absolutely fit very well with the objectives that are set out on the CDF, and I know that this committee looked at those at the time, and they demonstrate really good engagement at community level. And I've been along with some of those community engagement events to try and engage directly with the community and build some enthusiasm and excitement around the bids. So, you know, I'm really pleased to see some of that come through in the bids that I've seen. Some were designed to be very broad and to reach a large target group, some of those bids. Others have been more focused on the needs of very specific community groups within the broader area, let's say. And as I say, many of them include a capital element, which we were encouraging and supportive of, but not all of them. So EMCCA officials have done an initial sift for me and have made recommendations in a report which I'm currently considering before coming to a final decision on which of these bids most meets the criteria that we set, but also, you know, we think will have the most impact within those communities. So none of the money has actually gone out of the door yet. But I hope that, you know, you will understand that my intention is that this CDF will be part of shaping our approach to social investment. And if that's of something of interest to this committee, you might want to come back at some point and have a broader discussion about how we can do more with every element of what we spend in this authority to maximise the social investment, the social value of what we do. And I'd be very pleased to kind of draw on any views and expertise on that. So we will look at those bids once they go in, and we will then see over the next 3 years the outcomes and track the impact that they make.
I think that we all appreciate the intention and the value of what the fund is meant to do. So you'll evaluate the bids and make recommendation to the board, or is it your ultimate decision?
It's ultimately my decision, which obviously there's a governance process around that, which is all of the bids have been evaluated by officers. They are making recommendations on those. I will be looking at those and making a decision on them.
So in terms of governance and scrutiny of those in relation to those bids, is it possible for the board to see those bids?
So I would not suggest doing that, simply because I don't want to hold up that process now, and that process has already been agreed. So if you want to retrospectively track any of the successful bidders as they go through, I'm sure that is something. But what I don't want to do is introduce another process into something that wasn't there in the first place and therefore might hold up. I'm keen to be able to get money out the door, and if we do find that there are some other areas where we can engage, I'm happy to have a further discussion.
I appreciate it. We want to try and avoid retrospectively. We'd like to try and see it in advance, and there certainly wouldn't be any intention to hold up the process. But maybe
yeah, I think really helpful information where there's, you say, 2 or more groups from different areas. Will the process include kind of combining those things and you know, making those groups work together? Sometimes there's a competition element, so there's that part of the question. But the other part about the process and the criteria, I think that would be really useful for us to not retrospectively do the judgment, but see what the criteria are, particularly because a lot of us have got UK SPF projects, the historical, that are still continuing, but also Plan for Neighbourhoods funding, PIPIF projects, and these are community projects as well, calls to the community. So it'd be really useful, because what you're trying to do is make sure that whatever funding comes for whichever community projects, it fits in, or it's not repeated with asks, because you get multiple asks in Plan for Neighbourhoods or PIPIF projects. So that's useful information to come back the other way, but the process would be really useful to know the criteria.
It's a little late to understand the criteria because the bids are already...
But that's what I said, the criteria was already there.
They were circulated.
And they were circulated, and you covered that in my last meeting when I came before the this committee. So all of that was covered at the time. You have had sight of that.
And we can dig that out for you and again and go from there.
I will just pick up on the point of, if there are, in some of the bids, you're right, there is clearly a bit of a competition, but there are some where I will be potentially suggesting to the successful bidder that they go and have a conversation with one of the others about how they can incorporate some of their good ideas into it. So, you know, we are keen to do whatever we can in some places. In some cases that will not be the case, it's not possible, or the bid or the actual idea is not the right idea. But where we can, we will do it.
We've been joined by a substitute member, I guess.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Sarita Marie Raymond Wall. I'm on the council at Nottingham City Council.
Absolutely, thank you. Appreciate you coming along at very, very short notice.
No, you're very welcome. Do I need to spell my name out for the minutes? Are you okay?
No.
Thank you very much.
We'll have it. Thank you very much. So
you're very welcome.
We're in the process of conversation with the Mayor, which has been ongoing. Just to point out to you, it is being live streamed, so you, by your attendance, we get your agreement to being live streamed in the course of the meeting.
Indeed, I won't pick my nose down.
Okay. Right, we're very conscious of time for the Mayor, so I'm going to move on to another. Sorry, did you want to?
No.
Okay.
I did have my
Sorry, yeah, come on.
Just quickly, I think it would be useful for us to scrutinise it ex ante, because I think it's important that we interrogate the degree to which the outcomes from these projects support EMCCA's strategic priorities. I think that would be a useful exercise for us to look at, because presumably the criteria could be amended or changed going forward if it were deemed that it wasn't attracting the right kind of projects. It would be really helpful, I believe, if colleagues agree, that we do scrutinise further down the line the outputs of all of these schemes versus the objectives and ambitions of the strategies that they support.
And hopefully the Mayor would find that helpful in terms of evaluating the outcomes.
I'm happy for that engagement once we kind of get going and we're able to ensure that those organisations that are working are able to start doing something that we can then track.
I'm talking about once they've delivered the schemes to see what they actually achieved versus the ambitions of the strategy.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I mean, I have to concur with my respective colleague. I think the social impact, we need to know the social impact of any projects and schemes. That would be very helpful. I know it's fluid, but we really need to have those outcomes recorded and scrutiny. Have an extra layer of scrutiny. I think it's going to be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. We move on then to a slightly different topic, and one of the difficulties that the East Midlands Combined Authority suffers is potentially we're massive in terms of tourism and arts and, across the whole area. There's a little concern around the level of input towards promoting tourism and building what East Midlands Combined Authority is about in terms of arts and culture. Can you give us your thoughts and ambitions and plans in relation to that?
Okay, so first of all, the level of arts, culture and funding within the region is primarily national funding rather than regional funding, so it's still determined at a national level, and I have continued to lobby the Department for Culture, Media and Sport to correct that disparity, which has been, let's just say, decades in the making. I have to say, you may not have seen the news this morning, but the Department for Culture, Media and Sports has announced a further £1.5 billion over the next 5 years towards heritage, arts, culture, supporting buildings as well, particularly around capital for some of our museums, both nationally and locally. I will also be responding whilst positively to the Secretary of State on putting that investment in. I shall be challenging her to tell me how the people in the East Midlands region are getting the benefit of the national museums, because significant amount of that money goes into our wonderful, top class national museums and galleries. And I understand that they are, in the City of London, they're in London and they are part of the city, but there needs to be a regional programme for that. Their exhibits need to come out and go on tours and be loaned to the regions, because, or there needs to be a programme to ensure that people are able to access it from the regions in some way. So, whilst I welcome this additional funding, into the sector of arts and culture, I want to see what this is going to do for the people in the East Midlands. I would say also that Visit East Midlands is all about growing the size of the East Midlands pie. Our aim is to deliver the 1 billion visitor economy growth over the next 10 years and raise the region's national and international profile. And that's not just about the beautiful places that we have to visit, whether it be Chatsworth House, the Peak District, the museums, the places in the Sherwood Forest, or our various castles across the region. It's not just about those as attractions, it's also about the culture and the arts and the things that take place in our region that I want to be able to support. And so we have approved the establishment of Visit East Midlands. The board has approved that. We're putting funding behind it. and as a system leader across the region, we will set a single regional visitor economy framework. So essentially a sector plan for the whole of the region, so that we're not competing against each other, but we're actually doing things collaboratively that grows that pie rather than trying to take chunks out of each other. When people come to visit here in the East Midlands, they may come for a conference or to go to the football in Nottingham. I want them to stay the weekend, enjoy everything that Nottingham has, but I also want them to head over to Derby or to Derbyshire and enjoy other parts, or even into Nottinghamshire. And that's really important. So we've got the system responsibility. We'll also be a strategic commissioner, looking at designing programmes, designing some aspects of the marketing for the region. That doesn't take away from the individual assets that we have within our region. What it does allow is us to showcase them much better. So we will be doing that and deploying investment strategically to support it. And we will of course be supporting delivery organisations and partners to succeed within the regional visitor economy, so that we're making the most of that, but we're also understanding the other aspects of what EMCCA and the region can do. So we know that hospitality is a big challenge at the moment in terms of the business community. What else can we do with our local growth fund, which is to support the growth plan, and the visitor economy is part of that? What can we do with transport, for example, to make sure that the honey spots around our region are great for tourists to get to, but not terrible for the people who live there? So how do we balance those things? And obviously, in due course, I'm sure you will want to come back to the discussion over the overnight visitor levy, which is a power that the government has announced will be with mayors. It's still very much in the consultation phase, but it will create a revenue stream that this region can decide how it uses, not by taking money from our council taxpayers, but by using an overnight visitor levy, which is standard practice in most of Europe, America and Canada and many other parts of the world, and investing that money to support our visitor economy, to make it an even more attractive place for people to come here. And that will also support events, cultural events, arts, things that will attract people to want to come into this region and stay.
And it's something that you rightly say is becoming more and more common practice across around
It's
the world.
very common practice.
Okay.
Just a slightly different aspects to it, because obviously the funding is very limited at the moment, and along the theme of EMCCA always looking to do things differently, can we look at the inclusive growth with regard to looking at the arts and culture and the social value side of it, because it's a massive contributor that still isn't recognised, and we've got pockets of excellence all the way across the East Midlands, and I'm from Mansfield. We've got a little gem in Mansfield Museum. We've had an AI neurodiverse exhibition only the last week that stretched its recognition to Paris. But what I'm saying is, it's that being able to see the value to our left behind communities by inclusion in investment in arts and culture, which is kind of separate to the bigger picture.
These initiatives need joining up, don't they? Yes, you want to come in?
No, I absolutely agree with Mayor Abrams. I think that's really pertinent, what he said. I just wanted to raise about, supporting small businesses, as part of the plan, what we're going to be doing to support small businesses, and also the more disadvantaged areas across the EMCCA, what we're going to do to support those communities in relation to this big massive plan. Because a lot of times in the city centre, and it's, are we going to do anything in like more disadvantaged neighbourhoods? There's therapy, arts as well for therapy, can link up with health. Are we doing that? Sorry, lastminute.com, I do apologise, sorry.
No, that's all right. I mean,
Just
I think
passion.
that's a whole separate question
Okay,
in terms of, in relation to what we're trying to cover in arts and culture. I'm conscious of your time. You've got time to squeeze one more in?
Yeah.
Yeah? Good. And I'm going to raise this one in relation to investment zones. Whilst we hear and see what's happening in terms of investment zones around the authority, there's a gap noted in the heartlands, and that we don't know of an investment zone in that particular area. But an update on the strategy in relation to and development of investment zones from your point of view.
Okay, well, I'll start by saying that I'm quite surprised that you haven't noticed that actually one of our investment zones is in the heartlands. So, which is because Bassetlaw and Bolsover are part of the heartlands, and Explorer Park is one of our EMIS zones, the East Midland Investment Zone. It's currently occupied by Lang O'Rourke. So the focus is on advanced manufacturing and construction. Overall, on the sites of our investment zones, we have £160 million to deploy from the government over 10 years, which will support the growth of jobs, particularly in advanced manufacturing and clean energy across the region. But one of those sites is definitely supporting and in the heartlands. In terms of, I don't know whether there was the other broader issue around the update on the investment zones, again, I would say to you that we are working very hard to ensure that money is going into where there is growth potential, and that all of that sits with the framework of our local growth plan. And if I can just come back briefly on the point that was being made around broader arts and culture. Arts and culture is for everybody, right? It's not, it shouldn't be outside of anybody in any part of our region's access, because it is absolutely an enabler and an opportunity for people. It's also, for all of us, it's part of what makes life, right, rather than existence. And I think it's hugely important in our communities, and that's the reason why it features along with part of that broader visitor economy, and also art, digital, creative technology is one of our pillars of our growth plan. So we will invest in it because it is the right thing to do, and because it will create huge jobs, skills across all of those areas. But we invest in it also because it is the right thing to do for culture and arts, and promoting the culture of this region, which is different from many other parts of the region.
And creating an identity for the region.
Absolutely.
Can I just come back on one point there?
I'm very conscious now the Mayor's got to go, and we've got the rest of the business to go through. Very quickly, Andy, if you want to raise that.
Yeah, the reference to the fusion in the north of Bassetlaw, is that the what we're talking about there? No.
Explorer Park, which is on the borders of it's Worksop, right? It's Worksop, borders versus Bassetlaw. So it's Bassetlaw and borders onto Bolsover. So it's absolutely in the heartlands.
Okay. I was thinking more like innovation zone around the advanced logistics and manufacturing in the Ashfield area.
That's a different matter. That's not our investment zones.
Okay.
Okay. Unless there are any other burning questions for the Mayor, I'm going to draw a line under that and release her for the other business that she's got to go and do. Any other burning questions? Thank you, Mayor Clare, for your time today and your practice in answering those questions. We're going to move on to the budget, and so we'll see you on Monday. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to tweak the agenda a little and deal with the the Mayor's budget at the end of his presentation in relation to the budget. So I'm going to move on to the officer's presentation in relation to the main budget.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'll be handing over to my colleague Nick to do the bulk of the overview presentation of the budget. You'll recall that we brought a draft budget to this committee on the 22nd of November. And so this presentation today will focus on the changes since then. You of course did have the opportunity, we'll cover that a bit in the presentation, an opportunity to comment and deep dive in 2 or 3 areas of the budget which you did at your informal session on the 11th of December, which was an enormously helpful and positive and constructive session. As we're setting up, can I just maybe say a couple of things. The budget for 26-27, so that's the financial year that will begin on the 1st of April 2026, is an incredibly positive budget in the sense that it demonstrates the growing role and maturity and breadth of responsibilities of EMCCA. We're looking at a revenue expenditure of 226 million for 26-27 and capital investment of 290 million for the same financial years. And within that, both on the revenue and the capital side, there are significant proposals on transportation, delivering growth and investment in the region. And we've covered some of that in the Q&A with the Mayor, particularly in things, the areas like transport, highways and public transport and so on. As I say, we'll be focusing here on the changes since November, and I will, without further ado, and now that we've got the slides and I've filled the space there, I will hand over to my colleague Nick, who will take us through an overview of the budget.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. So yes, as Richard has said, we come in here today probably to focus primarily on the changes on the budget since it was presented to you back in November. These are the key things that have happened since and have been fed through to the updated numbers. I think that the biggest one is at the top there. And following the announcement of the capital funding for EMCCA that was available, we were able to secure potentially another £20 million of incentive funding, which is for capital maintenance, and can be utilised by the authorities to increase their amount of money that they've got available for highway maintenance. And then on top of that, we have also allocated a further 20 million from general TCR funding to highway maintenance as well. So essentially that's £40 million worth of extra funding to highway maintenance over and above what was built into the budget, and obviously that will be split across the 4 constituent authorities. Just one very slight caveat on that, because this incentive funding, in order to actually secure that monies, you need to be able to demonstrate that you meet certain criteria about how you apply your asset management principles in terms of how you manage your assets. But all 4 constituent authorities have been able to demonstrate that in the current financial year, so we don't envisage any problems with being able to access that funding in next financial year as well. The next thing that was changed is that the public transport contribution that we talked about earlier, constituent authorities' contribution into EMCCA to run the public transport that is transferring into us from the end of this month. There's grant money that comes in to offset the costs to the constituent authorities as part of that, and we have now had those bus grant numbers finalised for next year. They represent a very modest increase over the 25-26 numbers of less than 1%, and then they are flatlined for 2 years after that. So obviously that's not great news in that context. But those numbers have been fed through. There have been other changes that have been made around some of the figures that feed into the levy based on latest updated information that we've had from constituent authorities about the costs of those services in the current year. So that's made quite a significant change. We've obviously, Mayor Clare's just referred to the local growth fund. That's £108 million that we're going to be able to access over the next 4 years, and is a split between revenue and capital in that amount. It's more revenue focused in the first year, so we get 24 million in the first year, of which 18 million is revenue and 6 million is capital. But by the final year of the 4, it's all capital, so it goes to 27 million, and it's a sliding scale from revenue to capital over that period. And in terms of how that money is going to be utilised, then obviously that is still being worked through, but will be utilised to maximise the benefits you can bring in terms of delivering that local growth plan. We also were rewarded with an extra £1.5 million in the local government finance settlement, which covers 3 financial years, so it's roughly £500,000 per year. And again, there's a steering group being set up to look at how that funding can be utilised to best effect across the region. And then finally, the other announcement that came in was around the mayoral capacity fund, which is essentially 1.5 million. There's an extra 200,000 to cover costs of national insurance changes from the government. That was pretty much in line with what we were expected. And 1 million of that is funding the mayoral budget, which we'll come on to at the end. And then just finally on that slide, the only other thing to point out is there are still, even now, some funding streams that we've not had absolutely confirmed at this stage. And one of the biggest ones of those is the Adult Skills Fund. So we're still waiting those numbers. But obviously, whatever funding we get, we will deliver a programme that utilises that funding in its entirety. So these tables here just show that progression from the draft budget that was presented back in November. So at that point, we were predicting a budget of £206 million on the revenue side. The budget that is going to board on Monday now has a revenue budget of 226 million. And you can see from the table that the biggest change there is that local growth fund money that's coming in, the £18 million that I mentioned. And then obviously it's just matched on the income side because we've got the additional grant to fund it. There are a few other changes there, not least in terms of some of those considerations around the public transport levy, the extra grant, etc. So all of those kind of feed through on the income side at the bottom half of the table. And there were a couple of other smaller funding streams as well that have come in, including of course the homelessness and rough sleeping grant that I just referred to. Then on the capital side, again, a significant increase in terms of the scale of the funding that's available for next year. £232 million was what was in the draft capital programme. The actual figure now is pretty much £290 million. You can see the capital element of the local growth fund obviously coming in there. There's that highway maintenance incentive fund additional amount that I mentioned, 21 million, best part of 21 million. And then there's also that additional £21 million switch from the generic transport for capital, transport city regions capital money as well to support highway maintenance. There's also another couple of adjustments there around the investment fund and the brownfield housing fund. Essentially what we're doing at that stage is we're reflecting an updated assessment of what can be spent in the current financial year. Those funds are essentially money that won't be spent in the current year that we're now building into next year's capital programme. So those are the changes. This slide focuses on the public transport levy contribution that we've again spoken about already. So what you can see here is that the gross costs of transport that we're expecting in 26-27 is best part of 82 million across the 4 constituent authorities. And those costs are based on information that they've provided to us about what the cost of those services are at the moment. And you can see then that we're utilising £21 million worth of bus grant, which, and the bus grant has to be used, there's certain conditions about it, so it has to be used and attached to specific services for which the fund they qualify for the fund. So by applying that takes us down to this 61 million, which is like a kind of baseline transport levy, which sort of sets a baseline for what we think the levy's likely to be as we go forward. In addition to that, there are, across some of the authorities, additional BSIP funds that we can utilise to further offset the cost of services in 26-27, and that's the carry forward line that you can see. So then the bottom line there is the 55 million, that's the total amount of the transport contribution that the authorities will be paying over to EMCCA in this new financial year. It is worth pointing out though that there are still some considerations going on, so that number potentially could change. There's further discussions going on. We will update numbers, including any changes that arise from, because it's based on assessments in the current financial year, and as we move through the rest of the financial year and we see what the outturn position is for 25-26, we'll potentially reflect some of those changes in that transport levy position as well for 26-27. And then the assumption in terms of the longer medium-term financial plan is that the amount of money that's available to us, the levy, will increase in real terms over the life of the MTF. So on the 24th of November, when the budget was approved, we at that point launched a consultation on the budget and sent various information out to a wide group of stakeholders asking for feedback. And of course we came along to an informal meeting of this board where you'd asked for some extra information on some specific aspects of the budget at the previous meeting. And this is just to reflect the kind of the areas that you asked about in terms of the Brownfield Housing Fund and the capacity building of the organisation and the mitigating the end of the shared prosperity funds. And that just reflects, what I've written up there, is just reflects the nature of the conversation and the presentations that were made at that time. We've also had two other points made as part of our budget consultation, which are reflected at the bottom there. One is very much an ongoing theme around making sure that the connectivity of the bus services around villages and larger towns are improved. And then the other one is just in terms of, as we are growing the region and we're looking to deliver economic growth, etc., that we consider trying to ensure that small and medium enterprises are engaged and brought in to deliver as much of that growth as possible. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but this is like the kind of final budget as presented in the report, and you can kind of see there that the two big directorates are around place, strategy and inclusive growth, and then then you can see that the corporate expenditure is just a kind of relatively small proportion of the total, and then you can kind of see how the funding is made up to deliver that 226, and obviously by far the biggest element of that is the grant, but then there's also the public transport levy and various other aspects as well in there. And then this is the capital programme as well. Oh, actually, I was just going to make, let me just go back one. I was just going to make the point that although if you look across the 5 years on the medium-term financial plan, it looks like it tails away. I think what we've done, we've been relatively prudent in terms of our financial forecasts. So where we've got some certainty of some funding streams, we've had allocations for 3 years, etc. We've built that in. But where we're not absolutely sure whether those funding streams will continue or what level they'll continue at, we haven't made the same assumptions. So we would expect by the time we get to year 3 that there will be other funding available to us, but because we don't know the details at the moment, we haven't made any assumptions. So that's why the numbers tail away at this stage. And then in terms of the capital, sorry, those numbers may be a little bit small to see, but again you can see there the breakdown of the £290 million, including how much of it relates to capital. So right in the middle of the top section you've got 100 million highway maintenance and 20 million incentive funding, which is the potential 120 million that was talked about earlier. And there's a range of programmes there. I think it's worth noting from a capital point of view that the resources do not fall away, and that's largely due to the fifth line down, the Transport for City Regions generic capital funding, where the amounts that will be utilised and available ramp up across the life of the programme. So that's kind of increasingly good news as we move through the MTFP in terms of the amount of capital funding available to us. And that's it on the main budget.
Okay, thank you very much. Does that prompt any direct questions? Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, and the report's very comprehensive. I suppose there's two questions for me. One around the levy around bus services. So at the minute, obviously Section 106 our seal money is collected by the Borough, County Councils, etc. And there's some money towards bus improvements and new services. So I know it's stated in my patch. So what changes will happen in terms of that one for your budget to change that, so to speak? When you receive that money, will that come to you then go back out to authorities, or will it just stay with the constituent authorities on top of the budget that's already there for the levy?
If Section 106 monies have been collected to improve the bus services, then obviously we will be delivering the bus services. That will be our responsibility. So we would expect that Section 106 money to come over to us so that we can use it to effectively, as most effectively as possible, to support bus services.
Okay, and I appreciate you may not answer this one because it's more of a planning question, but I'll ask you if the record case can take back. That's negotiated currently by the constituent authorities, so my concern would be if they are negotiating that, but you're taking the money there, how will that relationship change? So would it now be the staff who are being cheapied over because obviously some of the staff members are involved in that with the planning colleagues? I'm just to put that as a wider point, because you can see what I mean, if they're negotiating a fee that you don't think is suitable, it could be a gap in that funding.
Yes, I mean, I think it's probably just worth saying that we've been working really, really closely and collaboratively with officers on all sides, because this is around making this work as a new system, regionally based for public transport, recognising the key responsibilities of constituent councils. So that principle, yes, applies, but the mechanics of how that will actually work in practice we'll still be working through over the next 12 months.
Okay, let me take it just I mean, you got what you paid there, but I think that would be really key because
aware of the issue, absolutely.
Yeah, because especially when development's taking a long time to happen. So, for example, I want to state in my patch, it's taken nearly 10 years to get to the stage now when the road's still not open to have the full bus service. About that negotiation about inflation, because now the money that's there probably won't be enough sufficient to cover the full service. I'm going to have to negotiate on there. So, just been wanting to look at in terms of how that's done. I think would be really good. And well, never one, Chairman. I'm happy to come up later if you want to go around the room first.
I've got one more. Go with your second.
Okay, thank you. Just around the budget itself, so a lot of money that you are allocating out to constituent authorities, obviously in terms of with the transport incentive. What kind of quality measures in there to make sure that money is being spent and make sure it's not being put in reserves, for example, by constituent authorities and being spent the right way? What kind of audit process will you have? Because like some might be that to make sure in future years that money's going out to the authorities, we're sure that it's being allocated not only fairly but also knowing it's going to be spent the right way rather than just assuming that it will be spent in terms of what the purpose might be from the authority.
I'll start and Nick may want to pick up. I mean, there will be different performance measures and outcomes for different allocations within that budget. So if I give you an example, so there's a highways maintenance block. We've already said there could be up to 120 million available to constituent councils for highways maintenance. We allocated 80 million last year. But we do know that, of course, 20 million of that will have specific performance measures and outcomes because that's the incentive funding.
Yeah.
So there's some things that will be kind of imposed on us by government.
Yeah.
And there's some things that we'll agree between ourselves and the constituent councils as we allocate that funding. So that's an example on the highway side. On the investment fund, which is obviously another funding part within the capital programme, that works through what we call the single assurance framework. So we talked earlier about projects coming onto the pipeline, and what they do is they move through the pipeline through business case and through grant determination through what we call the single assurance framework to make sure that we've built in the appropriate measures that yes, the money that we allocate is used for the purpose for which it was intended.
No, great, that's congrats, thank you very much.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. Obviously, I think you made the point about the fact that actually getting the money out the door, but also making sure you go through the right process. I think it's a good point because actually those two things actually work against each other sometimes because there is this pressure. We do need to spend the money. We do need to make sure that we can utilise it as quickly as possible to deliver the benefits that it's there for. But at the same time, we do need to make sure we go through those right processes. So we're very much aware of that. We will try and streamline the process as much as possible. But we won't throw money out until we're comfortable that all those checks have been done in the appropriate way.
Yeah, I think that's why, because like the towns fund we had, for example, from the government, where that was rushed up then, I think from what we're seeing now, some of it's still not being spent, or it's, you know, it's been dragged in and staying in bank accounts, or not being the way it to purposes, just making sure we're going to learn from that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Andy, and then yourself.
Yeah, you touched upon the question which was around the highway maintenance incentive funding. It'd just be, maybe not for here, but it'd be really interesting to know how that operates, you know, how they achieve and get the incentive in relation to performance. I think it would be useful for us to know at some point. Bring back to the overview of Scrutiny.
We don't have the kind of criteria to hand today, but
No.
certainly if the Scrutiny Commission wanted to have a bit of a deep dive into kind of highways maintenance and allocations and the incentive fund, obviously we're going to happy to come back suitably prepared on the next occasion, Mayor Andy.
Yeah, because it's a huge part of the budget, isn't it?
A question from yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think going on from what I think my councillor, is it Wheeler? I can't see half of the sound, but I do apologise. Yeah. Yes, so about outcomes, you know, such as what are the expected outcomes of the levy, such as reduced congestion and improved air quality, and you know, how will the levy be reviewed and updated over time, and just are there any alternative funding options being considered?
So I'll
Sorry, you don't have to. Yeah, I'm just a bit passionate about this.
No, absolutely, and again, my colleague Nick may want to build on this. Not explicitly in terms of the first part, because the levy is purposely based on the current cost that each of the 4 constituent councils spend on public transport, and then we use our grant funding to effectively offset that to get to a levy. But what we're going to do over the next 12 months before we set the levy for 27-28, i.e. the next financial year, is work with the constituent councils in terms of those prioritisation issues, making the efficiencies, etc., the economies of scale of having. So we're doing all of that.
That's great. Thank you.
Just in terms of potential investments that we might be looking to make as well in terms of the service, there may be things that we can invest some of our transport capital in, which will kind of help improve the services going forward. Obviously, no decisions have been made on any of this yet, but for example, we could invest in electric buses which would then have the benefit of you know, reducing emissions, but also potentially saving on revenue costs as well. But that's just something that's, you know, we potentially would consider. There's no decisions being made on that yet, but that would certainly be something we would look at.
So thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Gibbett?
Chair, I just want to give my apologies. The late start means I can't stay to the end now. I have another meeting at 2 that I need to get to. But can I just pick up on the response to Mayor Abrams' question in terms of the transport side of it? We're appointed as rapporteurs, and so it might be useful perhaps if we volunteer our time to go away behind the scenes and talk to office and get a better understanding, so that when it does come to committee, you've got 2 people with that little bit of extra knowledge as well that can help drive some of the lines of inquiry.
Like an excellent
good
idea.
idea.
You're already involved with the transport committee as well.
Yeah, that's right. So
that would, you run that alongside that.
I'd certainly be willing to use some of my time, and I think Andy would probably.
Yeah, sure, I would.
Can I pose a sort of state of the nation question here in terms of budgeting as a whole? You know, my experience in dealing with budgets is that the capital budget can be particularly difficult to meet, if you like, or to deliver. So I take your views on where the authority is at in terms of its capacity and ability to deal with a capital budget of 290 million.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, it's a really good question, and one, you know, which, you know, EMCCA as an organisation, we are, you know, very, very focused on, because we appreciate that we are being generously funded in capital terms. So we have the recurring investment fund, we have the TCR announcement of 2 billion over 6 years for the region. We've got the Brownfield Housing Fund, and so on and so forth. So it is, I think, incumbent upon us to develop those mechanisms to deliver that programme. And when we talked on the 11th of December about some of these matters, one of the things you raised as a committee was are we building enough capacity on the revenue side, skills, resources, to unlock that capital programme? And you know, that is a fundamental part of why our capacity, our organisational growth is actually aimed at unlocking that capital programme, because we know we need to get more efficient and better at getting that money deployed into the right projects and investments.
And as an example, the brownfield sites funding, it's ring-fence money which has to be dealt with in a particular way, which creates difficulties in itself. But as an authority, I'm hoping that we will eventually start to get more and more unring-fence money that we can use and decide to deploy for our priorities. But you need the capacity and the resources to be able to deal with that fund.
Yeah, and part of the evolution of the mayoral combined authorities is that a number of our peer authorities that have been established a lot longer than we have, because we're fairly new in the overall scheme of things, have got, in the case of Greater Manchester and the West Midlands, and are getting, in the case of a couple of the West Yorkshire and the Liverpool City region, what they call an integrated settlement. So if you can see those lines down there, we're getting lots and lots of individual pots of funding, and that's the same on the revenue side. The ambition that we are all working towards, and as I say, some organisations are in the process of getting, is what is called this integrated settlement, where rather than getting lots and lots of funding pots that we have to we have to deploy in particular ways, we will get a more generalised pot that allows us to be much more flexible in how we prioritise our spending, rather than being tied to those lines there. But that's one for the future, not for today.
Okay, Andy?
Just a quick question on that. You said not for today, but for the future. But we've all put in an application form, have we? We're applying for it.
Yeah.
And how realistic is that, given the maturity of our current organisation?
And without getting into too much into the technicalities, Andy, essentially we are obviously a mayoral combined authority, county combined authority. The next phase of our evolution will be to get a designation of what we call an established organisation. That comes with it some flexibilities, but you can only get an integrated settlement if you are an established organisation. So there's a bit of a kind of journey that we've got to go on to demonstrate to government that we've got the capability, the capacity, and the right skills to go on that journey.
And I think we're starting to get some recognition along those lines.
Indeed.
Can I? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. You're very kind. I just wanted to ask, how does the EMCCA plan to balance the need for speedy development of brownfield sites with ensuring community engagement and tackling potential concerns around density, infrastructure and local character? You can email it to me if it's... But, yeah.
So I would much prefer not to attempt to answer that question. Obviously, that's not my area of expertise, but we can obviously certainly get colleagues back. And of course, at the informal Scrutiny Committee on the 11th of December, we did have our brownfield housing lead on the call, and he was questioned by colleagues around the table.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Time. I'm hoping to wrap this meeting up by 1:30. One I picked out of the changes in the budget was just a relatively small amount of £1.5 million for homelessness.
Yeah. Nick, do you want to come in on that one?
Why? We're going to accept it and we will take it, but why has that come to us, and what's the plan for that? Because constituent authorities have each got their own funding along the same lines. So how's that going to be used?
Well, I think it was put in there because obviously it had been identified that homelessness was a particular issue. So more funding was identified and made available to support, support the service. It was allocated to mayoral combined authorities rather than to the sort of kind of the responsibilities that currently have got responsibility for homelessness. I think it's kind of trying to look at it a little bit more strategically rather than trying to deal with individual specific issues on the street. But having said that, I think that how that money is going to be utilised, there's going to be a committee or a group of people coming together to work out the best ways in which that can be utilised, including obviously representatives from the cities and the districts who have that direct responsibility for
So
provision.
Do we
So
currently
we
have
used to-
responsible officers for homelessness, or? Because yes, I can get the idea of looking at it strategically, but I am aware that most of, well, certainly my own authorities have been allocated homelessness funding again.
So my
And it's got a
understanding,
continuing programme.
so my understanding of the settlement is that the homelessness funding allocated to district and unitary councils remains, and that responsibility for homelessness remains with the district and the unitary councils. This is an additional amount of money, not top sliced from your allocations, but an additional allocation to the mayor and combined authorities to assist on a regional basis.
Strategic regional basis.
Exactly.
Okay, well,
It's
that's
half
interesting.
£500,000 a year, which is about £1.5
£500,000 a
million.
year.
Yeah, it might be interesting to hear something about that.
Yeah, can I just ask a question?
Yes, you
Oh,
can.
thank you. Can I just say, because I know homelessness, because I've just done it, funded it, in Derbyshire, usually goes through public health. So will you be in discussions with public health?
Absolutely, for sure. Colleagues will be developing that plan. As I say, it was only announced to us on the 17th or the 18th of December, so just before
Right.
Christmas. So obviously we are working now internally, and we will be working with partners to work out the best way to deploy that additional funding.
Of course, in two-tier areas, then that connection isn't quite so strong, because obviously the district councils don't have the responsibility for the public health in the way
Yeah,
that
we
do in
have
Derbyshire.
just
It's all-
funded
it's all doing
some
that.
money to districts and others
Yeah.
in Derbyshire. Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Yes, and a
Yeah.
quick one, and then
Just a
I'm going
quick
to
one,
try
if
and
I can't
wrap
answer
this
it,
up.
and if it's a relevant person can email me the information, I'll leave my email at the end. Thank you. Are there any opportunities for collaborative working across local authorities in East Midlands to tackle homelessness? So a bit of a holistic approach and partnership.
Yeah, and I think absolutely, and given that we've had this additional pot of funding, I think that's obviously a clear invitation to have that dialogue with the local authorities in the region about how we best use that additional funding and work together across the region, because clearly, you know, often homelessness, the answers are not on a localised basis. There's actually a kind of broader regional kind of.
And then we'll also have somebody from Derby presenting as homeless in Nottingham, someone from Nottingham going to Derby or Mansfield, yeah, so we need,
Derbyshire.
yay, beautiful.
So is that an action
Final
then?
one, go on.
Sorry, is that an action that's going to come out of that? Are you going to come back with the strategy around that funding? Because there's lots of pockets of expertise everywhere, isn't there?
There's a steering group being set up.
I'll find out what the plan is, because I imagine the sensible thing would be to pull all of the people together that are involved in homelessness in the counties
Yeah.
and the district
Well,
boroughs,
like I say,
and
generally
start
goes
from
to
there,
public
really,
health,
because this is a brand new thing.
as you know.
So it'll be a partnership-led
Yeah.
use of the funding, I could imagine. That's
Yeah, it generally if it's
Yeah.
input,
It's
it
all
goes to public health, and then public health generally distribute.
But it won't happen until there's a
Yeah.
group of people together across
Well,
the
no,
region,
because
really.
at the moment we're distributing.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so
I'll find out and let you know.
Are we okay to take the recommendations as printed on the papers in terms of noting the changes and to note the final budget?
Welcome the additional funding.
We do need to touch on the mayoral budget. There's a separate £1 million fund which is decided by the mayor, and there's a different voting system for that. Go on.
Yeah, indeed, the only reason that we showed it separately is because of those different voting arrangements that apply to this budget. But in the overall scheme of things, you know, it's £1 million against what I've just described to you previously. It's about £500 million worth of total spending. So this is very small, and it primarily just revolves around the funding that's required for the mayor's office to operate. And you can see a breakdown there of the kind of the various budget heads against it. And there is a small pot of money, Mayor's Initiatives, that's available for her to do, you know, kind of smaller scale projects, etc. At her discretion. And you know, so in the overall scheme of things, it's small, but it's separately identified because of that voting arrangement. And it is pretty much in line with the sort of scale of the mayoral budgets, I think, from a lot of the other mayoral combined authorities as well. So we're not out of kilter in terms of how big that is.
Super. So any quick questions on that, or can we note the recommendations to note the budget and the medium-term financial plan?
Yeah.
Yes?
And then just before we close, if I may, Chair, what I will do when I present the budget to board on Monday, I will reference the conversation that we've had today on the changes and also the deep dive we had into those three aspects on the 11th of December, so to make sure that the board is aware that, you know, we've had these discussions and this dialogue today.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll send on Monday anyway.
We're not finished
No,
yet.
we've got one more item.
There we go.
I'll be quick.
So we've got one last item to deal with quickly in relation to the launch of the task and finish group.
Yeah.
Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, so our job today is to launch the task and finish group formally. We've had 3 volunteers from Cecile Wright, who's Professor Cecile Wright from Derby, David Hughes, Derby Dales, and Tom, I've forgotten again, where is it? Tom Monroe, that's right, thank you very much, he's volunteered. So, but we do need a chair who is a constituent member of this committee. No one has yet come forward.
Our chair took many.
I mean, really, as a chair, it's just it's a single point of contact for the members, really, that the officers can work with. So it's not an onerous job. It just means more chats with me and the officers in advance of meetings and etc.
A couple of meetings that have been set up.
Yeah, there's already a couple of meetings
that. I
in
mean,
play.
Emily's just about the only other one or the constituent member here that might have the capacity.
Okay, yeah, I can.
Thank you, Emily. Wonderful.
Please nag me.
Yeah, brilliant.
Myself and Jonathan probably will be keeping an oversight on how it's going. I'll attend 1 or 2 of the meetings where I can.
Most of them will be online, but the first
online's better for me generally. So. That's great.
Thank you.
Just a short term, we need to report it back in April.
So I proposed that we do an interim kind of update in March, because we've got the informal in March. But it'll be my job to write it, and then it'll be approved. The expectation is the final report will come to this committee in April for its final meeting of the municipal year, so that you all approve it, and then it'll go. What the recommendation will go forward to the board. Also, at the March meeting, we'll also bring a draft, as far as I've got with it, a draft of the annual report for this committee. So that again we can approve it in April before any members change and all that kind of thing happens. And again that will then go to the first board meeting of the new municipal year in June, July.
Okay. Yes.
Do you do any other business as an agenda item now, is it?
Not
Not that formal.
Not normally, but
Can I raise something, please?
you can just mention something by all
Thank
means.
you so much, Chair.
Guide you over with it.
Right, so seeing as this is streamed live and so it's not confidential, in relation to, under the Equality Act 2010, I just wanted to raise on behalf of those councillors that are disabled, whether or not the respected chair will consider having these meetings hybrid meetings to engage and sorry, you're nodding your head.
I think Michael's going to have an answer to you.
Unfortunately, the law restricts us to do that at the moment.
Under the Equality Act 2010, making reasonable adjustments.
Yeah.
That's the way we.
I would love to see that piece.
However, we believe that the local government review, part of that, will provide the freedom to have hybrid meetings. But at the moment, our scrutiny committees have to take place in public like this, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm just saying, so a councillor couldn't attend who's got a disability, who can't attend, but could attend via...
they couldn't vote, that's the problem.
Sorry?
They wouldn't be allowed to vote, so they would watch it.
So if you could just send me all the information in relation to that, so I can look at it myself and look into that, that'd be really helpful, because I think sometimes some councillors can't attend, and they're really struggling because of disabilities. So we do have an Equality Act 2010, which is a government legislation that should make reasonable adjustments for those people, but it'd be interesting to see your standpoint and why you're saying we can't do that.
It's not ours, it's national.
Great, send it to me, please.
It's a big part of the discussion
Yeah, when
going
some
forward.
meetings are statutory, they're like this, they have to be in person. person.
So you're not full
it's just
council.
like,
I mean, me being
yeah.
disabled myself, I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
get the training and
Yeah,
everything.
I know.
You know,
And I think that's
It-
really unfair.
it's statutory, but it doesn't count with the Equality Act.
Right, well, if you can send me the information, I can look at that, it'd be really helpful, thank you.
We will.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much
and
for
thank
attending.
you
Particularly
for coming in late
notice.
notice.
My granddaughter's with the next door neighbour, who I trust him.